The Left's Fascist Fashion Show, The Emperor Has No Clue. By Greg Schluter. There's an old tale we all know well, the emperor's new clothes. A vain ruler is tricked by clever weavers who promise him a garment so fine, so refined, that only the truly intelligent can see it. Not wanting to appear stupid, his ministers go along with the ruse. So does the crowd. And so the emperor parades through the streets in what is, in truth, nothing at all, naked and deluded, until a child, untouched by fear or pretense, simply calls out the obvious: he's not wearing anything. We live now in such a moment. The words fascist and Nazi have been slung about like Cro-Magnon battle clubs by those who fancy themselves modern prophets yet are entirely bereft of understanding or reflection. These terms have become the rhetorical equivalents of the emperor's imaginary robe, indicators of virtue to the indoctrinated but seen as utter nonsense by anyone daring to look with unclouded eyes. And here's the staggering irony: the ones hurling these accusations, often self-appointed guardians of democracy and tolerance, are the ones most resembling fascists themselves. What fascism actually is? To understand just how absurd these slurs are, we need to return to what fascism actually is. Fascism originated in early 20th century Europe, most notably under Benito Mussolini in Italy. The term derives from the Latin fasces, a bundle of rods bound around an axe, symbolizing unity through force. Fascism is a political philosophy rooted in authoritarian control, suppression of dissent, state-directed economic structures, national myth-making, and violence against opposition. Hitler's National Socialism, Nazism, shared many of these traits, laced with racial ideology and genocidal intent. Fascism was characterized by centralized state control over private industry, censorship of opposing ideas, propaganda campaigns to manipulate the masses, political violence to silence dissent, cult-like elevation of the state or leader, intolerance toward religious or ideological diversity, and the legal weaponization of institutions. It was brutal. It was bloody. And it crushed the human soul. From the gas chambers of Auschwitz to Mussolini's execution squads, fascism left behind a legacy of industrial-scale horror. 6 million Jews were systematically exterminated. So were millions more: Catholic priests, intellectuals, Romani, Slavs, the disabled, the politically inconvenient. Book burnings. Show trials. Propaganda fed into every home, every school, every radio. The state became God. Dissent was heresy. And human life became disposable, reduced to race, class, utility, or threat. This is not metaphor. Fascism is history carved in smoke, steel, and blood. Who's wearing the boots today? And now, in 2025, who fits this mold? Who shuts down speech they don't like? Who coerces private companies into censorship? Who rewrites history, demands ideological compliance, and intimidates those who resist? Is it Trump? Vance? Musk? No. It is the progressive left, the ones claiming to fight fascism, who have weaponized every classical attribute of it. As revealed in the Twitter files, a series of internal communications released by Elon Musk through journalists like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, the Biden federal government, particularly the FBI and CDC, routinely pressured Twitter and other platforms to suppress dissenting voices. This included tweets questioning the efficacy of masks, vaccine mandates, and the origins of COVID. The FBI flagged posts it wanted taken down, and the Biden White House requested the deplatforming of accounts. What was once dismissed as conspiracy theory was proven to be coordinated suppression of free speech by state actors, a textbook case of fascist media control. In 2020 alone, BLM and Antifa-affiliated riots caused an estimated $1 to $2 billion in insured damages, making it the costliest civil unrest in U.S. history, ironically, mostly in blue-run cities. Federal buildings were firebombed. Police officers were assaulted. Businesses were looted, often excused as mostly peaceful protests. Meanwhile, conservative speakers like Ben Shapiro, Charles Murray, and Jordan Peterson were shouted down or banned from campuses, often under threat of violence. There have been assassination attempts against Donald Trump. Notably, on July 13, 2024, during a rally near Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump was grazed on his right ear by a bullet fired by Thomas Matthew Crooks. Crooks fired 8 rounds, killing one audience member and injuring two others before being killed by the Secret Service. Most recently, organized attacks on Tesla vehicles in Germany and California, videos show activists smashing windows and spray painting graffiti, have been tacitly justified or downplayed by certain progressive voices, framing Musk not as a citizen with rights but as a threat to the state's ideological vision. From indoctrination to institutionalization, public education has been taken over by ideological frameworks like critical race theory and radical gender ideology. In states like California, children are indoctrinated with ethnic identity politics. Elementary schools teach gender journeys and preferred pronouns, often without parental consent. In higher education, conservative professors and students self-censor or face harassment. Historical distortions, such as the 1619 Project, which faced criticism from leading historians like Gordon Wood and James McPherson for its inaccuracies, are taught as fact. The Department of Justice under Merrick Garland aggressively prosecuted pro-life activists under the FACE Act, even raiding homes with armed agents for peaceful sidewalk protests, as seen in the arrest of Mark Houck in 2022. Meanwhile, violent left-wing protesters, those who torched federal buildings or attacked crisis pregnancy centers, saw few, if any, consequences. Parents speaking out at school board meetings were labeled potential domestic terrorists by the National School Boards Association in a letter that prompted DOJ involvement. Contrast that with selective leniency, hundreds of BLM rioters were released without charges in cities like Portland and New York, with bail funds even promoted by Vice President Kamala Harris. Class-based Marxism has given way to identity-based neo-Marxism, where one's moral authority derives from victim status. Fascism similarly obsessed over collective identity, only then it was race and nation. Today, it's gender, orientation, and perceived privilege. Academia and DEI bureaucracies push a binary, oppressor versus oppressed. Children are taught that whiteness is inherently racist and men are inherently violent. Scientific facts, like biological sex, are considered oppressive constructs. The consequence? Division, resentment, and the erosion of individual dignity in favor of group identity. And yet these same actors scream fascism at those who dare to oppose their ideology. The mindlessness of the mob. It takes very little intellect to call someone a Nazi. It takes even less to join the chorus. But it takes courage, reason, and humility to pause and ask, what do these terms actually mean? To slander your political opponents as fascist while embodying every fascist tactic is not just ironic, it's delusional. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, delusional disorder includes fixed false beliefs that persist despite evidence. The idea that common-sense Americans, black, white, male, female, immigrant, or otherwise, who voted for Trump, support Musk's free speech absolutism, or resonate with J.D. Vance's working-class advocacy are somehow secret Nazis is textbook delusion. When madness becomes policy, clinical psychology affirms this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, pioneered by Aaron T. Beck in the 1960s, identifies distorted thinking patterns that lead to emotional and behavioral dysfunction. Archives of General Psychiatry, 1964. Matthias de Smet, in The Psychology of Totalitarianism, 2022, explores how fear, isolation, and repeated messaging create a kind of collective trance, what he calls mass formation psychosis. And Irving Janis' seminal Victims of Groupthink, 1972, shows how cohesive groups can abandon rational thought in favor of enforced unanimity. When those entrusted with education, governance, and healthcare promote clearly false realities, like gender being assigned or that biology is a social construct, the damage isn't just cultural. It's clinical. And this isn't abstract. At our southern border, policy madness enables cartels, child trafficking, and fentanyl to devastate entire communities. In gender clinics, children are subjected to irreversible surgeries based on ideological fantasies, while depression, regret, and suicide soar. Our mental health crisis is unmatched in American history. Young people, groomed into sexual and ideological confusion, report the highest rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide we've ever seen. The 2024 reality check. But in 2024, America pushed back. In state after state, people of every race, gender, age, and income bracket voted not for Trumpism as cult but for common sense as creed. The message was unmistakable: we are not insane. We want reality back. The millions who supported this return to sanity weren't brownshirts. They were plumbers, teachers, single mothers, ex-liberals, Latinos, black business owners, young professionals, grandparents, people who are tired of the lies, the coercion, and the chaos. And yes, they're also the ones being called fascists by those wearing the emperor's delusional threads. A path to cultural recovery. Recovery from collective dysfunction requires steps well established by the field of psychology. First, reality testing, the ability to identify and challenge false beliefs. Second, reintegration of identity, teaching that identity is not a self-constructed fantasy but is grounded in biological, psychological, and moral truth. Third, immersion in truthful community, healing is relational. Churches, families, and virtuous friendships must become lifeboats of sanity. Fourth, accountability, institutions that promote dysfunction must face consequences. And finally, the courage to confront. Societal healing begins when enough people simply tell the truth, even when it costs them. The naked truth, and our greater hope. And so we return to the tale. The child who saw reality for what it was, he saved more than his own mind. He broke the spell for others. In every generation, we need such clarity. But even beyond politics or psychology, there's a deeper truth we must recover, about who we are. We are not random accidents nor autonomous identities defined by our feelings. The most fundamental truth is this: we are made in the image of God. He made us for Himself. He presides over the universe. We cannot presume to define it, we are defined by it. Yes, history is scarred with scandalous abuses by religion wielding ungodly power. But don't dismiss Jesus because of Judas. Christ remains the invitation to unsurpassed intimacy, purpose, and love, for which every human heart, knowingly or not, is aching. A culture of truth, empathy, magnanimity, and sacrificial love is the only path forward, not merely for our souls but for our republic. The founders knew this. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other, said John Adams. Thomas Jefferson affirmed, the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. And George Washington asked, can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? We don't need to invent sanity. We need to return to it. The emperor has no clothes. The spell is breaking, not by decree or revolution but by something far more powerful, truth spoken plainly. And a child shall lead them. Isaiah 11:6. Not with outrage, but with innocence. Not with volume, but with clarity. The courage to say what all know but few dare to admit. The humility to see things as they are. The grace to refuse pretense and instead live in the light. At long last, the people are beginning to say it. May we all have the courage, and the grace, to be that child.